going back. What's up, everybody? Welcome, everybody, to a live rendition of Taco Tuesday. Let's talk about insurance. Glenn's got Taco Bell. I've got Taco Bell with my name on it. With my name on it.
Baby. It's been a while. It's been a minute. It's been a busy summer.
Mr. Glen Shelton.
Yes, sir.
When is the last time we did a live Taco Tuesday?
When was the last time we did a live Taco Tuesday with Taco Bell? It's the question.
Because an emergency podcast doesn't count. That's like its own thing.
It really doesn't. It's been a minute.
It's become its own thing, by the way, emergency podcast. Maybe we should make another podcast and abandon this podcast.
I can't talk about it on air. However, I still want to do an emergency podcast about what I said I wanted to do an emergency podcast on. I believe it was Saturday night when I was texting you. You were watching. Yeah. Any public comments you'd like to make? Guys, it's a potential sequel to our NBA episode that everybody loved.
We are revisiting a very controversial topic.
We are.
Believe it or not, my phone actually rang off the hook from powers that be when we last streamed this. I received, I want to say, 4 different phone calls from people that kind of made me nervous to receive phone calls from when we talked about this last. And a lot has changed in the ecosystem as well since we last had this conversation. It's probably 2 years ago now. We did a Taco Tuesday podcast where we talked about integrity versus Amerilife. There was a lot of questions we did not know the answers to about what was the deal about these two operations and these two organizations that seem to kind of have monopolies over this space. And since then, I have become a integrity partner of sorts myself, and joined a side, if you will. And so that will make things very interesting in this conversation. But it was immensely popular. And so it only makes sense that 2 years later, with us knowing a lot more about these organizations than we did back then, we revisit it and talk about it.
Let's talk about it.
First things first.
Whoa,
is there
Prime.
anything that you remember we talked about at your Prime? Shout out Logan Paul. Is there anything we talked about from the last conversation about this that you would like to revisit, or you would like to kind of bring up? Is there anything that is swimming through your head there? Like, we talked about it last time and we didn't know the answer to this, and now I do.
I actually was thinking about that as you were talking there. I forgot how amazing it is just to eat tacos and then just let you speak. I was having a moment right there. I was like, I get to just eat lunch while you just get to talk. So, guys, I have my phone pulled up so I can actually see some comments or questions as they come in. Before I answer that, because I do have something top of mind, there's a question already that already came in, which is incredible. This one's geared for you, Christian, definitely to answer. What does integrity partner mean? What does that mean? If you're an integrity partner, what does that mean?
I have to be really careful about what I say on this episode, because the last one, I was not affiliated like that. The last time we had this conversation, this time we are, so I have to be very careful. But by definition, an integrity partner is someone that's either been acquired or purchased by integrity, and they, have ownership of an organization, or they've gone into an exclusive partnership with an organization where, they partner together. Typically, an integrity partner is going to have the top contracts that anybody can get anywhere, top of hierarchy contracts. They're going to have access to a lot of additional technology tools. They're going to have access to just a litany of resources that nobody else has access to. So an integrity partner, in my mind, means you are in the top 1% of the industry. You are the top of the pyramid, if you will. That's basically that'd be my definition.
So you are in the
without
top
incriminating
1%.
myself.
I just want to clarify what you just said to everybody. You are a top 1% of the insurance, senior Medicare insurance world. You're in the top 1%.
I think that'd be fair. I think that'd be fair. Like, is that not fair? Is that
No,
not? Is that?
I think it is fair. I just wanted to make you say those words. I thought it'd be funny
Force
to make
me
you,
to say
I
it.
wanted to force you to say those words. No, I think that's fair. I think these really okay. So let's go back.
Yeah,
That was a
this
good.
could
I
go
think that
so
was a
many
good.
directions. This could go so many directions.
Let's go back though because it was January. Oh wow, we're getting the. It's like an ASMR experience. We're getting like the microphone, like the whole nine. I also have our other unofficial sponsor with me today, guys. Red Bull gives insurance producers wings to actually write policies. Maybe you could write more than 4 Medicare apps a year if you just drink some Red Bull.
Good Lord. Good Lord.
Let's go back. Let's go back to what was one of our most popular Taco Tuesday podcasts.
Yeah.
Which was Integrity versus Amerilife. It was January 2021.
Wow. So 2.5 years ago.
Yeah, I think it was January 2021. Good Lord. There's guys, if you're listening to this and you're not watching, I feel obligated to narrate for a second what just happened on screen. Christian's eating what appears to be a salad burrito. I don't really know what just happened. There was an explosion of sauce and lettuce. And we might have to stop the stream. I'm not sure how this is going to proceed from here. Okay, I'm going to. Oh my God. Back to the basics, you guys. So let's go back. Let's go back. Oh my God. We're going to lose everybody today. I can feel it. The whole audience is going to unsubscribe. Okay. Stay on topic here. So we go back to what I believe was January 2021. I'm not 100% sure.
I'm struggling.
I'm trying to talk.
Okay, I'm done. I'm sorry. I'm done.
Did you get
I'm
it?
done. I'm done.
Oh my God. Okay. I believe it was January. It had to be January because we started this podcast in 2020. And I believe it was, it had to, I'm almost positive it was January 2021.
I can get an exact date, I think.
I would love for you to do that.
I think if you YouTube search in Amerilife versus Integrity, it's the first thing that comes up.
I know it was January because we were coming out of AEP, going into OEP.
Okay, so
I am curious if it was 21 or 22. I believe it was 21. So let's start. Let's confirm the date before I get off the rails here.
Yeah, so so when I search it on the search, it definitely says, that it was 2 years ago. I am trying to find it, like on my video search, so I can actually see the exact day, but it's challenging. Let's just run with that. Let's say January.
Let's say 20. I think it was January 2021. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Date aside. At the time, this was the beginning of this aggregation, consolidation, hedge fund money, M&A, these acquisitions that were all of a sudden starting to happen rapid fire.
Right.
Started in, I'd say, 2019, 2020. I think we started to see some of it, but by the time we had that, the reason we talked about it at the time is because it all of a sudden seemed like all of these major IMOs, FMOs, some of these call centers, people that I've worked with, people that Christian had worked with, they were getting snapped up left and right. And yes, two of the biggest players in the space, Amerilife and Integrity, they were the main ones behind it. Now, there are other organizations that have similar strategies that are of relative size, but from our point of view, Amerilife and Integrity were the two big ones, and that's why we had that conversation at the time. Now, one thing that I know we talked about, there was this open-ended question that we kind of went back and forth on. I think we had a lot of comments on. And the open-ended question was, how is this going to affect the marketplace? Is this going to be a good thing? Is this going to be a bad thing? At the time, I felt like there was a lot of uncertainty about where this was going to go. I kind of, in my mind, actually, before I say anything else, I want to stop there and I want to ask you. Okay, so that being said, 2 years ago, we're in the future now. That's the sound of time. In case you don't know. Now we're here. We're in the future. We can answer this question. Obviously, there's still more time to come, but what do you think of these mergers and acquisitions, Amerilife, Integrity, other people, other partners buying up these smaller agencies, smaller call centers, consolidating? What do you think of this? Was this a good thing? Was this a bad thing? Is it too early to tell? What do you think?
I think that my viewpoint, of course, people are going to hear what I have to say and they're going to say it's skewed because
bias.
I am very biased in this. Let's just call it what it is. But I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing because I think my viewpoint, being in the position I'm in right now, is when somebody does a partnership with one of these organizations, what they're doing is not partnering and just like piecing out, and then like the quality that their clients receive goes down the hill, their quality that their agents, their partnerships, everything that everybody that does business with that organization goes downhill. That's not really what's happening. The leadership is typically staying on, and what is happening is additional resources, whether it be monetarily, whether it be through technology, whether it be through additional partnerships, resources, access to different people and businesses they wouldn't have had access to previously, access to, a top contract with a carrier maybe they couldn't get it with previously, all of that stuff. And those additional resources allow the organization to partner in a way that's going to allow them to grow, right? It's going to allow them to continue to grow way faster and way more efficiently and effectively than they probably could have done on their own. And so that's my view of it. And that creates a better experience for everybody that does business with that organization. Before I was in the position that I'm in right now, I was strictly, I remember when the FMO that we've worked with historically did a partnership with Integrity, and they were one of the first big ones years ago. I think it was like 2018, 2019, somewhere in that time frame. And my experience as an agent got better after that partnership. It wasn't bad at all. And so I think a lot of people out there, when they talk about private equity, they're trying to paint a narrative. They're trying to paint a narrative of any of these two large organizations and try to paint a narrative that, like, by being aligned with them, it's going to hurt your business. And that's such bullshit. Like, to me, it's usually, it comes from people that are competing with these organizations. And that's all they got. They have no other critique that you can really throw when you look at the impact that is being made. And so I think that is probably my viewpoint on it. I think it's all good. I think it's all good.
Yeah. So obviously my perspective is a little different. I'm not an Integrity partner, for the record, you guys. Not yet. Integrity, I think they forgot to send me my letter. It's like Hogwarts. Christian got his letter of acceptance into Hogwarts. I'm assuming mine's still coming in the mail. We'll see. But so I have a little different viewpoint because I am more neutral, I would say, than Christian, because I am not an Integrity partner. I have not been acquired as of this time. Part of me feels like, okay, so part of me does agree with what Christian said, though. Part of me agrees with the fact that I do believe, for the most, and thank you for eating off camera. Oh my gosh, guys, slow clap for Christian eating off camera and maybe even turning that microphone off. There was some PTSD that was forming inside me when that burrito exploded on camera. So I have seen a lot of what Christian said. I've seen a lot of good things. I've seen resources that weren't available before being available to agents. I've seen growth in some of these companies where a call center goes from 20 people to 200 people. and there is quality management in place, and people are getting paid, and more beneficiaries are being helped. I've seen that firsthand. I don't disagree with that. I think the other big picture item that I would mention that I think is worth talking about is this this idea, this concept that there's so many baby boomers, so many seniors that are on Medicare, that are coming on Medicare. We will never be able to help them all. We
Right.
will never. And honestly, I know we've talked about it almost from like a conspiratorial standpoint, that like the government's trying to step in and like steal the Medicare business from agents. I mean, you guys, there's not enough of us. There will never be enough of
Mm-hmm.
us. There's not enough call centers. There's not enough licensed agents in call centers to even handle the amount of business that exists and that's coming our way. So, from that point of view, when you just look at the sheer numbers, this this type of growth with hedge fund backed finance, like big money coming into the space, it's almost like necessary. It's almost like
Mm-hmm.
almost had to happen, because if it didn't, all of us would just be crushed like a tuna can by the enormous weight of the exploding marketplace, because keeping up with this type of growth would be very difficult. So, the other part of it though for me is I almost think it's too early still to really tell. I mean, a lot of this acquisition stuff is in the past 4 or 5 years. If we went back 5 years ago, like 2018, it was really just getting started. Only some of the bigger players were being acquired.
Mm-hmm.
Where we're at now, there's been a plethora of acquisitions. So I would be really curious to, again, have this conversation again 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now. And at that point, I feel like, 2028, being able to look back and say, Christian, 2018, it's been a decade. How did this all play out? Did it stay really positive? Did this help more agents and more agencies out than it hurt? Or did it monopolize things, right? Or is it going to create a monopoly where, again, sometimes less choice is a bad thing, because again, if
Yeah.
everyone's lined up with the same hierarchy, essentially, is there going to be less competition, less choice, and will that potentially lead to a negative thing for agents and agencies? I haven't seen it yet. I haven't seen that play out yet, but historically, when it comes to monopolies, that's usually what happens, right?
So I think it's interesting to think about, like, it's kind of like judging Ben Simmons on his rookie year for his whole career. I was listening to a video yesterday that was like Colin Cowherd put him as the sixth best player in the NBA his rookie year. And he was like, and there was like videos surfacing of like him talking about how great he was as a player
That's hilarious.
versus now where he's like the 13th man on the team. And he can't play and he can't do anything. And he's like,
Yeah.
and so yeah, I mean, I think that there could be a lot that actually can transpire. The argument kind of against larger organizations kind of eating up a ton of the market is they control a lot of things. They control distribution. They have a lot of impact on carriers.
Right.
They have a lot of impact on how business is done, and they have a lot of control of data, which is probably something that doesn't get talked about enough. They have a lot of control over data. Now, is that always necessarily a bad thing? Again, it's hard to say. It's probably, as you correctly pointed out, probably too soon to really say 100%.
Right.
But that's kind of like what some of the the people that are real concerned about kind of what's going on will point out. Those are kind of the things that are worrisome in the eyes of some. It's not really worrisome to me necessarily, but like I've also seen, I guess it just depends on kind of what we're looking at, right? Like, because if someone's getting into this business right now, they might be thinking about 15 years from now, where am I going to be 15 years from now? Whereas somebody like me, I've been in 10 years. So like I'm more thinking about like where am I going to be 5 years from now? Am I going to be here 15 years from now? I don't know. I have no idea. Um, am I still going to be doing on live on 15 years from now? I don't know.
Hey, welcome to Taco
Hey!
Tuesday. It's
Integrity versus Amerilife
2038.
part 6.
It's 2038, and we're still tacoing about insurance.
we're about to turn 50,
God.
both of us.
Oh my God. Terrific.
But no, I think I think there's something to be said there, definitely. I will say this, and this might get me in trouble, and I've been no stranger to say things on these streams that have gotten me in trouble. I think it's good I think the competition is good. That there's these two organizations that are really, trying to basically compete against each other. I think the competition is good. I think it breeds better results by trying to get an edge on the other for everybody that's involved that works with these organizations.
Well,
I think
okay. Here's the hypothetical, right? The hypothetical is Amerilife and Integrity become these superpowers. They're huge. They control 80-90% of the agent force.
if not already.
Right, if not already. Honestly, they probably, I would go on record right now from the information that I know about both of these entities that I would be surprised if Integrity and Amerilife combined had less than 80% of the total agent contract. Obviously, there's going to be like some one-offs and small carriers that like maybe they don't align with or they don't have contracts with. If you take the top 10 major senior insurance carriers and then you took Amerilife's downline and you took Integrity's downline, I bet it's 80% or more. So that being said, if Amerilife and Integrity and one of these insurance carriers have a meeting, they get together, and United Healthcare, this is all hypothetical. United Healthcare sits down and says, hey boys, we're cutting comp. Let your guys know. Like, we're not paying, we're paying 2% now on med subs. Let your downline know, and then they're just like
nightmare.
And they're like, okay. And then, there you go. 80% just like that overnight. I mean, I don't know. I don't know exactly how it would play out if something like that were to happen. But that's the sort of possible negative outcome that I see is this monopoly where they could somehow control the money in a way that agents and ultimately would end up getting compensated less. Maybe that's not even on the playing field, and I'm just looking at maybe that's like a really negative way of looking at it. But I am skeptical of this idea that two organizations collectively have 80% or more of the contracts of the senior insurance agent force. There's something to be said about that. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's all positive. I don't know.
It's hard to say. Like, I think, right, if you're one of these two organizations, my thought process would be like, if you acquire market share like that, you want to keep it. So they're going to probably use their weight and throw it around in a way to where it's going to look to increase, maybe comp in that example, right? Versus, I'm reading the comments; they're distracting me. But
what do you see? I'm only looking at the six-figure comment. What comments are you seeing right now?
I don't know. I don't know where this one's coming from, but I'll read it later. I'll read it later. Let me finish my thought. But
say it.
But it's one of those things where think that, okay, let's say they have 80%, and there's an organization out there that has 5%, and comp got cut, let's say, just for
the 80%.
That organization. That's a huge opportunity for that smaller 5% market share organization, right? Like, so I would think like a big focus would be retaining, but of course, you never, it's hard to say for sure. My what I've seen from my scope has been just innovation and progress and making things better on the integrity side. And I think they're such a goal-driven organization from the standpoint that, like, I think they're their mission statement's really, really strong. Not saying anything that Amerilife says not. It's just I have a lot more personal
Sure.
experience now with integrity, and I think their mission is way bigger. I think they just want to change the space and rock the space in a way to where they just make it so much better. Has kind of been my perception of it. You never know. I mean, there's always challenges, there's always potential pitfalls and things like that. But again,
That's
for anyone listening at home,
yeah.
I'm biased, so I have to
Well,
watch what I say.
but that's where it comes back, and I feel like it's too early to tell, right?
Yeah.
Like if there is, I mean, it's hard to predict the future. You look at the past, and I do agree that like the recent run rate of 2020, 2021, whenever we had this previous conversation to today, I do think it's been overwhelmingly positive so far. So I think it would be unfair to be like, oh, this is going to be horrible for agents, because so far it hasn't been. So far it has been a mostly positive experience, I think, overall. It's I think helped everybody. I think it's helped the consumers. I think it's helped agents. I think it's helped agency owners. I think so far we've seen everybody win from this type of money coming into the picture. I'm trying to think if there was anything else that we had discussed at the time.
I think at the time there was a lot of us not understanding kind of how the structure worked. And I think a lot of people didn't back then. Like,
Yeah.
how did it work? Was integrity in the hierarchy, with some of these FMOs? Was it like integrity and then the FMO underneath that? Now we kind of know that it's really the FMOs that have the contracts and integrity has ownership, so they're not really in the hierarchy like that.
Right.
There's a lot of things we know now that we didn't know back then when we first had this conversation.
Yeah.
I want to transition a little bit into an interesting kind of dynamic, right? Because one thing I think that I've seen is since these two organizations really started to, I mean, Amerilife's been around for a very long time, so it's not like that they're a brand new organization or anything like that. But I think, from my perspective anyway, seeing them buy organizations out like they have has been kind of a newer dynamic, maybe the last 4 or 5 years, 6 years, something like that. And I could be totally wrong about that. Maybe I'm ignorant, to their history of that. But I would say one thing we've seen that we didn't see before is universally, if your FMO does not have Connecture, Sunfire, and CSG, it's a joke. It's considered a joke. It's almost like, one of those things that you absolutely, have to carry to be competitive at all. I think that's kind of
Right.
been part of this, right? Like integrity with Medicare Center, they've built so many things into Medicare Center, CRM, Lead Center, all these different things that kind of go hand in hand with Medicare Center, which has all three platforms. Integrity buying CSG was an interesting dynamic, because they own the platform now.
So the resources attached to some of these bigger, I mean, I think.
My point in saying that. Sorry, I didn't mean to catch up. My point in saying that was 5 years ago. You didn't see that. It was almost like
that's true.
You didn't. There were still so many paper apps being done. People were going to carrier sites and keeping track of 25 portals and doing apps in those portals. It's almost universal now, and I think that's because of these two organizations.
Mostly. Well, and I think if you're like someone like yourself who started in the industry 10 years, again, both of us have been in the space for about a decade. If we were to look at what the industry was like when we first got started versus what exists today, it is like it's not even recognizable. It's not even recognizable. And again, the money funded a lot of these things, these tools, and then they, going from something like CSG that the agent had to pay out of pocket for to now they have these tools accessible for free because their overarching hierarchy is paying for it. That's a big deal. That is a big deal, and it's easier than ever to write business, you guys. It's crazy how easy it is compared to what it used to be. There used to not be an e-app. There was no voice signatures. Everything had to be faxed. You had to go get a signed amendment. if something on the application, I mean, it's crazy, the stuff that we had to go through a decade ago. So as a new agent, you have a ton of resources available that weren't available before. So yeah, I think that's very fair to bring up. I want to know what this question is, though. You're dodging whatever question you saw. You got very uncomfortable. I want to see what this question.
I'll just read it to you. I'll just read it to you, and I'll let you react.
Yeah.
Which is bigger, integrity, Amerilife, or Chris Westfall's ego? Not my quote, unquote. I did not say that. It was someone, a user's.
I didn't expect that at all.
Just read it.
So I think it's close. However, my understanding is that integrity would be the biggest of those three. That's my understanding.
I would certainly agree with that. I think, that's one thing that I think about too, though, is like, what has transpired from the standpoint of like, what is baseline that you should expect from an FMO now? And I think they've changed the game from that. Before that, I can say for me, I was a top producing field agent and I got basically nothing for my FMO,
Yeah. Yep.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. Nothing. No marketing money, no platform. All I got was crappy training that didn't work that worked in the 80s. Like that. I'm like, I've sold enough policies to know that's not going to work.
Yeah.
And that's it. And at that time I was at like 18% med sup commission. I didn't even know it. Like that was my experience with FMOs back in that time.
Yeah.
Granted, yeah. I was under my father, and some of that commission stuff was my father, but it's one of those things where that's basically what we got from FMOs at that point in time. There was they were just sitting back and being like, thank you. The term, not every FMO, I should say, but the one, some of the ones we worked with early on, exclusively, that was the experience. It's like, now that I look back on it now with the term, that's been tossed around a little bit, is override vulture, just
so
sitting back. And
there's a post by Joanna that I'm trying to find right now where she, like, I think she articulated this so well, like this new agent mindset of it really is, like, it's almost cliche to say, but I would say very entitled. There's these entitled insurance agents. We see them all the time in the Facebook groups. There was someone the other day in one of the groups that posted, and they were like, "Why isn't anybody helping me?" It's like, that's what your upline's for. Like, why are you in, like, the Facebook group is not held responsible to help you. Like, call your upline.
Why isn't anyone helping me?
Like, I really want to see
who are you contracted under? Yeah. Like who are you? Like, what, you're just, like.
Oh, I found it. So shout out, Joanna, shout out to you. I'm going to read this because I thought it was hilarious, because it's so true. These new agents are an entitled class of their own. And then this is like a quote, like as if she's hearing this from me, which I'm sure she is. I've heard this. I'm seeing this talked about. I want part of your override that you're making on me. I want money in marketing co-op before I ever do any applications.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I also have a full-time 9-to-5 job, so you'll need to be available to answer my questions at night and on the weekend. I like to text at 1 a.m. I expect you to send me all the training recordings and cliff notes from everything you do while I'm at my day job. And I also want to onboard my 18-year-old and have you train them while I'm at work. And then 2 days later, I saw a celebrity who's not even appointed to sell Medicare on YouTube, so I want him as my IMO. Oh, man. But yeah, is that not the mindset?
Oh yeah, like, and of course, her and I are swimming in the same waters, to a sense, and so we see a lot of the same things. I see that constantly.
Oh yeah.
I've had people this year come to me and be like, listen, I've never been independent, never sold any policies independent. Maybe I was in a call center, maybe I was in a captive situation, maybe I'm just brand newly licensed, and I'd like some SGA contracts, please. I'm like, excuse me? I'm like, who are you again? What's your name? Billy, little Billy?
I would like some if they said please, you must give them SGA
I have to do it, I guess.
That's the rule.
And yeah, I mean, like it's, they're wanting 90% of the override. They're wanting exactly what she said, I talked to an agent the other day that was like, do you guys have a hotline that I can call 24/7 and get an answer to a question if I'm doing a policy? I'm like, no.
Nobody does.
I'm like, and who does?
Yeah,
who does?
Nobody.
The carriers have this thing called broker support lines. Not even they're open 24/7. They're just regular. That's
a wild question.
Yeah, I had that literally very recently, and I was like, crazy. No, and it wasn't asked meanly or anything, but it's like that was kind of the expectation in the mind. I was like, no, we have families, we have lives, we have other people to take care of, and yeah, it is very true, and I think maybe a negative of the value that you've seen probably from these two organizations to kind of tie it into that was it's kind of spoiled agents. Yeah. You could say that. Yeah. Could you not say that?
Yeah. I think that's a great. Yeah, I mean, look at it in any other industry. Oh, that was the other thing I was going to touch on too. You were talking about earlier. It just popped in my head. You're talking earlier about how you haven't this is a new thing, like this M&A thing, like it hasn't happened before. I think this is kind of the textbook in a lot of different spaces. In other lines of insurance, I think the M&A side, this has been very normal. I think so many people saw the trajectory of our market that they were like, how can we lose? If I throw $200 million into the senior insurance market, buying agencies over the next decade, how do we lose money? It'd be so hard to lose money. So I think that's a newer, I think the M&A plays that are happening, I think it's newer in our space just because of the growth of our space. But I think this playbook's been going on in all sorts of other industries and other lines of insurance for a long time. I don't think the concept or the playbook is new at all. I think the playground is new. I think there's new guys on the playground. Back to the spoiled agent comment, though, 100% is definitely it is a negative outcome of this for sure. But I think there was also, I think it's bigger than that. I think it's bigger. I think there's, and I hate to get on this soapbox because it almost sounds political, you guys, but there is an entitlement ideology that has gotten a lot worse nationwide over the past. And when you're talking about stuff like people just getting checks in the mail, stimulus checks, little stimmy checks. I mean, guys, what are we doing? What are we doing? And then we're all complaining about inflation. Everyone was like, give me that stimmy money. Oh, I got that stimmy check. And then, 2 years later, why is my milk $5 a gallon? It's like, what do you
1,500 stimmy check. Then the next year, your bills increase by 30 grand a year. Was that worth it? Was that really worth it? You couldn't have sold your old shoes or something at a garage sale or something.
Second, those checks got cut, I knew exactly where it was going.
Me too. I remember talking about it on a video.
I shared on my Facebook page. I remember I shared on my Facebook page. You can find it right now. Back in 2020, when all this stuff was going on, Tim Ferriss on his podcast, he had an economics expert on, and they were like, where does this go? When you cut, hundreds of billions of dollars and you just give it away for free, what happens? It's inflation happens, you guys. And then to get here in 2 or 3 years and everyone's just Anyways, that's kind of, we're kind of derailing from the point of the conversation here, though, is there is an entitlement mindset among new agents. There is some spoiled agents who I feel like have been handed a lot of things that older agents like Christian and myself did not get.
Yep.
So it's gotten worse.
I want to piggyback on what you just said there, right?
Yeah.
Like, think about this for a second. So I want you to think about you as a new agent, right? Like, what are some things when you and I got started in that time frame, right? Like 2010 to 2015, that kind of time frame, right? New age, like, it was a lot of people started cold calling to start their business. Most 99.9999999% of agents now have never made a single cold call. And that's why they complain about calling leads, is because like, you could give Christian Brindle any lead in the world. It could be like a 90-day age lead, and they're dead. And I wouldn't complain about it, because I'm like, sweet, it's not a cold call. That's where my brain goes. Because I cold called for 3 years. I made hundreds of phone calls a day, and it just, I'm cut from a different cloth because of it. Like, it builds a toughness. It builds a callus there. When I was my first 3-4 years writing as an agent, I did like 100% paper apps. There was hardly any e-apps in the Medicare space at that point in time. There was a few, but not a lot. So
they were clunky.
I went to people's houses. I would drive like hours away to meet with people. I grinded in a way as an agent, and succeeded at it, by the way. But so many people today have never kind of gone through that before. And I'm not saying they have to necessarily go through that. Like, obviously, I'm a fan of working smarter, not harder. But
you compare. So what Christian just described, again, that was my upbringing in the industry. My upbringing, if I got leads, they were old leads. The new leads were limited in supply. There was a lot of door knocking. Even if it was an old lead, if you didn't get them on the phone, you're going to go knock on their door. Again, something that I feel like has become, it's almost ostracized in the industry now. If you say you door knock, people are almost offended that you go door knock leads, or you go door knock at all. They're like, oh, nobody wants you to show up at their house anymore. Why would you go knock on someone's door? It's like, people have been transacting business door to door like that for a millennia, like for 1,000, 2,000 years. Like go back to like when Jesus was here walking around, like people were knocking on the door. Like, that's how business got done. And that's how I did it. My best months, I did the most door knocks for sure. Like, there was a trajectory, very easy to follow. If I just called and set appointments versus door knocking and setting appointments, the door knocks, I made so much money knocking doors. It was wild.
Yeah.
So that's Christianized upbringing. Compare it to a new agent today. This is what happens. Okay. A new agent today signs up. They get a free CRM that they get a login to. A lot of times that technology in that CRM is relatively advanced. There's probably some automated follow-up tools. Follow-up for Christian and I was picking up the phone and calling them, or showing up at their house. That was how Christian and I did follow-up. There was no automations. There was no assistance. There was nothing. Now an agent's getting access to all of this technology for free. Some of the automation can be done for them. So it's like literally follow-ups happening without them having to do anything. They're getting like brand new, fresh digital leads dumped into their CRM every day.
Mm-hmm.
All I have to do is click and call. Like, I really wanted to say a very bad word right there. I had to hold back for a second. That's literally all they have to do. And they struggle. They struggle to do that. Like, I don't want to click this lead.
And I want to emphasize something too that's important to touch on with that, like the difference, because sometimes people that are unexperienced in sales, in like actual sales, like real sales, will hear the word cold call and they'll think it means calling leads. Let's emphasize something. When you have a lead, no matter what kind of lead that it is a person that some way, shape, or form has expressed some level of interest.
Yes.
In what you're doing. Right? Yes. Like, there's higher intent, there's lower intent, but a cold call is literally a name on a sheet that never asked for you to call.
Correct.
Right. So like the difference in quality is like, it's not even, it's unimaginable really.
You have to be such a better salesperson to execute on that compared to a warm lead. It's why, and again, that's what separates us though, right? Like that's the difference, right? Like so much sharper because of that. Being able to take someone that is absolutely frozen cold, they open their door, they answer their phone, and they're just like, who the hell is this? Right? Like, ugh, what is this? And being able to turn that person around, that takes an incredible amount of skill. It really does. Not to toot our own horns, but let's go ahead and toot. We're gonna pull toot toot.
But it's interesting because, like, you know, I think it all kind of relates together because we are in such a different world now in our industry. Now, I'm all for working smarter rather than harder, but I do think that it's one of those things that it's hard to kind of not notice it, especially if you've been around before. And you know, it's agents just don't have to go through as much to build. I mean, I think there's pros and cons, right? Like I think there's more competition now than there was when we were starting. There's that.
Yes.
And so, you know, we could probably talk about this for the next hour, but I think if you look at how these two organizations in particular have kind of changed the fold, I think they both have found ways on a technology perspective and in a lot of ways to really kind of move everything forward to make it easier for the agent. And some agents have taken it and ran with it and done, you know, bigger numbers than they ever could have before. Others, it's made them maybe a little softer.
Doesn't this conversation, so in my mind when we're having this conversation, doesn't it sound like the LOA agent is the future? Isn't that what this whole thing is? Isn't that what, like, in my mind, that's what, like, we were built to be brokers. Like we were chiseled from stone, you know, to please don't unsubscribe, guys. We love you. Christian and I are Michelangelo. We were sculpted from marble, you know, just built for tough, right? I mean, just made to hit the road. These newer agents are like sponges, and you can get stuff done with a sponge, but it's different. So in my mind, it's like the LOA agent's the future. The brokers are going to be the business owners, and the LOA agents are going to transact the business. And it seems like that's going to be the future of the next 10 years. I want to share something that I have to kind of be cryptic about. I can't say where I heard it, where I was, who I was with. I can't really share any of that specific information. However, I'm going to share the content of the message because we've talked about it before. It's applicable right here, right now. A very large organization. I was with leadership at a very large organization in the recent past. That's pretty cryptic, right?
That's very cryptic.
This is what was said, is that they believe 65% of their agent force was not capable of selling.
Wow. Whoa. Wow. That's pretty.
That's 2 out of 3 agents that they had contracted were not capable of selling.
That's wild.
And it makes me sad just to think about it, to hear it. Take that in internally, because again, Christian and I were built to sell. We were from a different era at this point. We're not
built through experiences, by the way.
Built through experience. Again, it was such like a sink or swim time. Like this whole cashier perspective of what an agency is today, like an agent today. like we were talking about, what is an agent today if an agent signs up with a big company, what does their job look like? It's kind of like the PNC world, right? The PNC world, if an agent signs up, they don't really have to do any prospecting. These people are just hitting them in the face all day, and they're just clicking buttons behind the computer, right? That is essentially what the Medicare world is turning into. I don't know if we're quite that far down the road yet, but we're definitely on that path. And historically, it wasn't like that at all. It was like thrown to the wolves, sink or swim. Like, here you go, figure it out. Here's a list, figure this out. Here's some old leads, good luck. And you had to sell. Like, it really took salesmanship to succeed. So the question I'd like to pose from this is, if you're this organization and you realize 2 out of 3 of your agents are not capable of selling, which means they are essentially just going to be Medicare Advantage cashiers, right? That's my interpretation of this, right?
Yes. Order takers. Like they that's what they're capable of, but nothing else.
Do you try to change that? Do you try to take that 2 out of 3 and make them better salespeople so they can actually sell something like final expense, like MedSup, like cancer insurance, right? These other products besides Medicare, besides zero premium Medicare Advantage policies, these other products do take salesmanship, you guys. Long-term care, short-term care, dental, vision, hearing. These are not cashier policies. So what do you do? What would you do?
Okay, so here's I have some thoughts on this because that's a very interesting question. I think if they could change it, they would. That's what I would say. And why do I say this? Every FMO has gobs and gobs and gobs of sales training webinars, like all the big ones, for sure. The carriers have it for free to anybody. Is it helping? Like, how do you fix it? Like, what can you do beyond training that can fix that? Right? Like, so is it easier to fix something when you've already, thrown a brick basically into the Grand Canyon, hoping that to fill it up? Or is it easier to find ways for them to order take? What's easier for that organization? I would say it's probably easier to find ways for them to order take.
Yeah, it's definitely too, because again, from a leadership perspective, it's easy to do what we talked about. It's easy to be like, here's the CRM, here's the quoting software, Sunfire, right? Like, it's easy to build this environment where you can essentially they're trying to take someone that is lower skilled or who would be more likely to fail in other situations, and they're trying to build out a model for success for them. So it's tough because on one hand, as a business owner, I agree with it from that perspective, but on the other hand, as a salesperson, I'm like, maybe these people just shouldn't be here. Again, as a salesperson and a sales organization, I would kind of be thinking maybe you cut the fat. And if they can't sell, maybe they just need to go do something else. Maybe they do need to get a cashier job.
Maybe. I think with increased regulations that we're seeing come out, with more competition, technology becoming more advanced, those 3 things are basically pushing people that are unworthy out of the industry. And I think that's where, kind of coming back to your question earlier about, is the LOA model the future? I think it's going to become more and more of that, because, back in the day, you could be mediocre and make a living selling insurance because it was that lucrative. Like you could go sign up with like some multi-level marketing final expense organization and make 30% commission and make a list of your friends and family, and you might make a couple of G's the first month by doing that. Like, it's becoming harder and harder for probably the everyday person to build an actual business.
100%.
I think that's where we're moving. It's not to say it's impossible right now. It's not impossible, and I don't know if it'll ever be impossible, but for a lot of people, it might be impossible because maybe they just, whatever you want to call it, maybe they don't have the work ethic, maybe they don't have the skill set, maybe whatever it is, it just makes it harder for them to do business, and they just need to be an order taker, and be in a call center or work for an LOA shop or something like that.
Right.
It's interesting. It's very, very interesting. I mean, for me, I can say this, like any agent that's contracted with us should be able to crush it with all the resources we have training wise. Anytime an agent contracts with us and they struggle, I instantly look at how much they've gone through Six Figure Medicare University. Usually it's like they've never logged in, or they've gone through like the first video where it's me explaining what the course is. Hey guys, thanks for joining the course. This is what you're going to learn. And then they log out, never log back in. Like
they're like, wow, hate that guy. Don't want to watch another minute of that video. Oh my gosh.
but my point is like,
right.
It's all there, like,
yeah, you can bring a horse to water. You can't make him drink though, for sure.
Right. Exactly.
For sure.
Like my entire business model is in that university. So that like, it's one of those things where like people sometimes are like, oh, I want the secret. I'm like, it's all in there. Secret sauce is 100% in there. People get into it. They contract with us, whatever the case might be, and they don't go through it. Is that Christian Brindle's fault? Am I supposed to be calling them every 2 days and be like, hey, you through the next section yet? What'd you think? Or am I supposed to produce the content and you do with it what you will,
Okay. So I'm going to give a shout out to Jeff Root while we're on the call here. My understanding at Digital BGA, which again, it's a virtual call center operation, right? Licensed agents are working virtually. That is essentially, I believe, the structure of the organization, at least for part of it. I think he has like maybe different options now. I don't know. Jeff, we need to talk if you ever watch this. I want to catch up with you. I know you're traveling Europe right now. You dog ditching America when we need you the most. No, I'm just kidding. But Jeff's organization has sales managers that do essentially do that. The sales managers are essentially following up on the agents constantly. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
did you call these leads? Did you call them? Oh, yeah. Well, where are the recordings? What did you say to them? Why didn't they call? Like, again, is it possible to turn some of these people into salespeople through that type of micromanagement with sales managers? Yeah, but man, that's brutal.
My question to that is like, that's something you do for like with an LOA person. That's not something
Right.
I feel like you have to do as an independent, right? Like they get paid more because they are supposed to do the 90% of the work, 95% of the work. So like and obviously Digital BGA has been very successful. So maybe that's a model that works. It's just crazy to me to think that somebody can contract, get full commission, get all the benefits,
get leads, get technology.
And they still need somebody to throw a shoe at them every once in a while.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that's the norm. I mean, when I talk to my peers who have call centers, I was just in a call center with agents. I was just inside it with you guys. And like this is what I was seeing. Like literally, dude. I'm in an insurance call center, okay? And there was this one person that was just like this. Like they had like Sunfire up on their computer, and their phone was probably ringing, bro. And they're just like sitting there, and they're just like, I don't want to be here right now. And I'm just like, wow, like you guys don't care. A lot of you just don't care. And that's the reality is a lot of you just don't care.
Societal problem.
You do need to be babysat, and you do need to be micromanaged, even though it's all there. Just like Christian was talking about his university. It is literally all there. How to sell, how to handle objections, how to do marketing, how to do Facebook leads. All of it is right there. It's not rocket science. This isn't an insanely difficult thing to figure out. It takes time. You do have to learn. You do have to put effort in. But it's all right there, right in front of you.
Mm-hmm. Yep. What are your... I want to be respectful of your time. We're about at the hour mark.
I see that.
I was thinking maybe what we could do...
Me.
Well, you're well. Someone has to. I was thinking one thing we could do as kind of like to wrap it up a little bit is go through a couple of the questions, because we really haven't addressed many of the questions in the chat here.
I would love to. I would love to get into some of the questions.
You cannot see the chat, can you?
Not in the same way that you. Oh, maybe I can actually. Hello. Oh my gosh, I was looking at private chat. Oh. Hello.
Okay.
What's up, Christian?
Okay, so I'm going to start at the very top and kind of go down looking for questions.
Yeah, let's do it.
Some of them we already answered, like what does an integrity partner mean? What qualifies someone to be eligible for an integrity partner contract? That's a good question. You have to be big enough. You have to do enough production. You have to have a big enough organization, basically. I don't know what their qualifications are these days. I couldn't give you an exact number, but you got to be big. Like you probably need to be doing minimum thousands of applications a year as an organization.
That sounds about right.
Let's see. A lot of these FMO are desperate to grow their business, so they're selling their overrides because they aren't offering real value.
That's a great comment.
Yeah,
that's a fantastic comment. There's some bigger IMOs that I could mention right now where they are just like, for lack of better terms, not that they're actually laundering money, but that in my mind, that's what I'm seeing. They're taking marketing dollars. These marketing dollars come from the carrier usually. They take these marketing dollars and instead of really doing anything marketing related with them, they basically just are like, hey, who wants to sign up? Who wants to sign up? Here's some money. Here's money to sign up. So, yeah, they're really selling their overrides or they're selling their marketing dollars just to buy contracts up. There was also this big thing, this big thing where some bigger names came out and they were like, well, we're allowed to do this. Like, this is part of our agreement. Like, we're allowed to just take marketing dollars and like offer signing bonuses and stuff. So I would be very leery of that for the exact reason that this person said, is because they aren't offering any real value.
Mm-hmm.
Money goes fast. If you get 20, 30, 40 grand to move your contracts, that's going to be gone. And now you're with a company that offers no real value.
Yeah. Agreed. I don't have anything to add. Very interesting. Kind of wish we talked on that a little bit more, but
yeah, me too.
Maybe part two.
Maybe next time.
I wanted to see quite a comment from Roxy. I wanted to see how my retention went in MAPD, MedSup, standalone, dental, hospital indemnity. Now adding life. My upline is the best. We work together more like partners. Good to hear it. That is a good.
How my retention. So, like, is she saying she was worried about her retention?
I guess. I'd imagine so. PNC has become price-driven. People who can't sell will push benefits over coverage. Ultimately is worse for the carrier, but the short-term bean counters look at enrollments rather than quality of client. By the way, that it's not to say that doesn't completely not happen in our space either.
That's what I was going to say.
We're like our minds were in unison.
I was like, well, that sounds like Medicare. Replace Medicare with PNC. Medicare has become price-driven. People who can't sell will push benefits over coverage. And it's ultimately worse for the carrier. And the short-term bean counter is always looking at, I would honestly say every single one of those comments, I could check the box to what's going on in Medicare right now.
I should do a video, like an hour video about insurance bean counters. That just inspired me to do that, because I have so many thoughts on bean counters.
There's such an obtuse amount of focus on what was last year's enrollment numbers. I don't care what else happened or how you got, like, what were last year's enrollment. Like, there's so much focus on that. That would be a great video.
It would. That'd be a good Taco Tuesday emergency podcast. Are bean counters ruining the insurance industry? Oh my God, I can see it right now. Emergency podcast. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, that's all the questions.
Good stuff, you guys.
Yeah.
Mr. Shelton, what final thoughts do you have on this topic? I feel like we went many places.
Thoughts. We did. To really tie it back to the integrity versus Amerilife. Regardless of if you're with one, the other, or maybe somebody else, I think it's never been a better time to sell insurance in the Medicare/senior insurance world. Like Christian and I talked about, it's evolved so much since we were agents originally and got our licenses. It's a very bright future for sure. I think you can't really go wrong unless you just choose not to work or not to sell. That's where you can go wrong. But those are my final thoughts, you guys. And I am excited to see what the next 5 years look like of the continued acquisition side of the business. And we will have to revisit this and kind of see what happened and where things are at.
Yep. 100%. My final thoughts. Oh, there is another question. I will just not give my final thoughts, and I'll answer this last question as my final thoughts.
Okay.
How much time do we have left to be able to get our contracting with carriers before blackout? So, good question. Blackout applies if you're changing FMOs for Medicare Advantage contracts. So, if there's a couple scenarios there. So let's say you're currently contracted and you're with an FMO and you want to change to a different FMO. They can either release you, and basically no carrier's blackout starts till 9/1. Some are 10/1. So you could basically move right away. If they won't release you, you typically, with all the major Medicare Advantage carriers, you have a 90-day self-release process that puts you into blackout. You move January 1st. If you're brand new and never been contracted, you can contract anytime. There is no blackout.
Middle of AAP.
So you could. Wouldn't recommend it, but you could. A lot of the large FMOs have nothing to do. They're staring at the wall, during AEP.
So November 1st, it's like, gotta get my AHIP done. Gotta get my AHIP done.
Yeah. Yeah, it is getting close, but that's basically the way it works. So that there you go. That's my final thoughts, explaining how that works.
Final thoughts. Black it out.
Guys, if you like this type of content, let us know about it. We really make our decisions on what kind of content we bring you based on your reaction. You guys are literally the ones that steer the ship. If we do some content and it doesn't get good reaction, both of us kind of look at each other and we're like, yeah, we're not going to do that again. So if you like this type of content, let us know about it. Like on YouTube. Make sure to engage, like the live stream in the Facebook groups. And yeah, we will catch you guys next time.
Until next Taco Tuesday, you guys, keep the questions coming. We'll try to get to them. Even if you're watching the replay a week from now, we will try to answer those questions. Keep selling insurance and eating tacos in large volume.
Later, guys.